Hi friends, I'm Jeffy G. When I talk about this renaissance of MIDI, what I'm really talking about is songwriting. I'm not that focused on how MIDI instruments talk to one another or the fact that MIDI is the technology embedded in your DAW. What I'm talking about is we've come through a period where loops and samples have dominated popular music. The whole technique of chopping, slicing, putting together different samples to make a unique sound has made hip-hop, EDM, and other genres extremely popular. We even developed a bunch of tools just for managing those audio files. But recently, something that I've noticed is that MIDI sound packs are popular again, and libraries of MIDI, not just for drums, but for melodic instruments, seem to be everywhere. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Maybe one of the biggest indicators is that Loopcloud, which has more than 14 million audio files of it. You can search for MIDI files and MIDI loops, you can download them and integrate them into your composition. And if Loopcloud is adding them in, you know that Splice and some of the others won't be far behind. Another big factor is just the number of MIDI generation tools that are out there. Where there used to be just a few that created chord progressions or a bass line, now there are dozens and they're very popular. Of all the MIDI generation tools, my favorite is Scalar, and you should know that Scalar 3, which is an amazing new release, will be out in March. Now Scalar has hundreds of functions, and I can't possibly demo all of them in this video, but there will be a link in the description and up above if you want to learn more about Scalar. One of the functions it has is chord progressions. They're organized by song, which you can see there's hundreds, and artists. I'm just going to choose song, alternative, 1. I'm given some chords here and I can drag those down into this area down at the bottom here. And create my own chord progression. I can bind that chord progression to the keys on my MIDI controller so that I just have to play one note at a time. And I can drag that MIDI into my DAW and have it play any instrument I like. Some people like MIDI generation as a solution for coming up with new ideas, and others like the Midi Chord Packs. Two other vendors that you should keep your eye on are some of the major vendors as they invest more heavily into MIDI generation. One is Native Instruments with Contact 8. Which now has chords, phrases, and leaps. The other would be Apple. In their Logic project, they now have session players that will automatically generate an accompanying track, a bass part, a piano part, a drum part. And they raise some interesting ethical questions about if you're using some of these MIDI generation tools, is the composition truly original? Or are you leaving it up to algorithms and artificial intelligence to come up with your core song? In fact, some of these MIDI generation tools are so extensive, it begs the question, how much original input does the artist really have to have? It becomes more of a technical exercise than an artistic one. One of the first Midi chord packs was from Unison. It was much aligned and criticized for just taking basic chord progressions and making them available. But in a way, they were a groundbreak. This is kind of the hierarchy of what you would get with the Unison Midi chord pack. Things were organized by key and the structure. You could get chord progressions and you basically just drag them into your DAW. So if I put a chord progression in there, I could open it with my MIDI editor. And for people who didn't know theory or didn't know chords, this was a great tool. If you take a look at the folders they gave you, chords were available as triads in every key. You could get some advanced chord progressions. A lot of the chord progressions were 3 or 4 chords long, but you could get some long chord progressions like this one. Of course, once you have that MIDI data in your DAW, you could modify the MIDI, shorten the notes, change the chords. And because it's MIDI, you can change the instrument. But in the evolution of those chord progressions, we've got AI tools today that generate the chords for you without dragging and dropping them. And you can just type in information like hip hop funky chords, click on generate, and this tool will create a chord progression for you. And you can determine how many bars long that chord progression will be and what key it's in. And once you've got chords that you've liked, you can just drag them into your DAW. Tools like this, in some cases, have made those MIDI chord packs obsolete. So modern tools, like this particular one called AI Chords, generate the chord progressions dynamically by typing in a prompt, clicking on the button generate, and then dragging them into your DAW. That effectively eliminates the need for MIDI chord packs. But if we look at some of the reasons why MIDI is popular again, some of it is obvious. With a MIDI file, you can change the instrument, you can change the sound. It's easy to modify MIDI in almost every DAW. And if you're creating sequencer-based music, those sequencers generally create MIDI. But that means as a composer, you have to know a little bit about how MIDI works. What are the limitations? What can you control? What can't you control? Another challenge is that if you're inundated with advertisements for MIDI bundles, how do you know which one's good?
This is not a MIDI chord pack. It's a MIDI chord progressions and song starters pack. A MIDI chord pack contains single chords, and you have to stick them together yourself. But with all MIDI Bundle 2, you get chord progressions, pre-selected to sound great. Song starters with melodies, rhythms, chords, and bass already inside.
And this effort to determine which bundles offer quality and variety has been on my mind. Let's just poke around the All MIDI Bundle 2 from Soundmasters so you get an idea of what it is you're buying and what you get. You see in this hierarchy of folders, after you've downloaded it, you're going to get thousands of MIDI files, and they're initially organized by genre. So if you click into dance and then break it down by key, these are a bunch of the MIDI files that are available to you in the key of C minor. You can click on pop, same type of thing. Then they've got a folder called Musical Ideas. Again, organized by key. This is where you might find things that inspire you to write a certain type of song. Now I can preview them because I'm using the NS Media Player, and I have a separate video on how to use this, and there's a link in the description up above. The alternative to previewing those MIDI files using that NS Media Player is to drag them into your DAW. What I've done is drag these MIDI files into this Logic project and then selected different instruments just so you could get an idea of the variety of sounds. Now let's use this one as an example. I'm actually using the Sculpture physical modeling synth in Logic, and it's being played through an amp with a pedal board. So although I'm starting with MIDI, I've highly modified the sounds. So thousands of MIDI files to browse through and find things that you're looking for, whether it's new ideas, chord progressions for Latin, pop, trap, jazz, dance. It's all here. In addition to just the MIDI files themselves, there is a lot of information here that can help you with your songwriting. For example, some chord progressions that are designed for singer-songwriters. There are, of course, just the Midi Chord Pack, very similar to what you might have seen in Unison, where all the chords and their progressions are organized into folders. And you can see here they've split them up into a different playing style: intense, open, which would be, chords that ring out a little bit more. And you can string together these MIDI files in your DAW. Then they've got what they call emotional chord progressions. These are generally piano. And then they have some videos that are pretty helpful. They describe what these MIDI files are, how to use them in your songs, and some secrets about writing songs.
Okay, so secret number 3, it's make it yours.
They also have some documents in PDF format that you can read. If you're brand new to this idea of using MIDI files, these can be pretty helpful. This one is on the 5% rule, tips and tricks. It's helpful. They've tried to bundle together not just the MIDI chords, but a bunch of documents and videos that will help you understand how to use these in the production of your songs. I've downloaded some of these MIDI bundles, and I've analyzed which ones are useful for me. I'm not inclined to use a bunch of different MIDI generators to create a song, but I'm not beyond using a MIDI sequence or a melody to be the basis for a new composition. I'm using those MIDI files more as inspiration than a replacement for my composition method. I'm still going to write a drum part, I'm still going to play a bass part, I might still rattle off some guitar and keys, but sometimes I do like browsing through MIDI files to find a new idea. What's your opinion on this renaissance of MIDI? Is it really something that's changing, something that I'm noticing? Do you notice it, and do you use MIDI in your compositions? If you found this video interesting or insightful, add some comments, click on the like button, consider subscribing to the channel. Thanks for watching.